Hey everyone, welcome back to the Always Closing podcast. We're finally back after taking a small break because we spent the last few months building out this video studio that you're seeing us in now. So this is officially our first video in the studio, so we're pretty excited to be finally working in here. So today I have my mother Liz, president of Westlake Escrow.
Hello.
Again, I know you've seen her on previous videos. So we thought we'd do our first episode again, starting the podcast back up in the studio together. And today I think we have a pretty interesting topic that's a little bit different than what we've normally talked about on these videos, to change it up a little bit. So today what we're going to be talking about is a project that we worked on for the last few years and that has been doing pretty well so far, which is we kind of got into the Airbnb business. So we're going to kind of tell you a little bit about the story of how that came about and the ups and downs and the experience so far. So if any of you are thinking about getting into Airbnb or renting out your property, then we have a little bit of tips and maybe mistakes that we made that you don't have to make the same ones. So let's start talking about it a little bit, Mom. How did the initial idea come about?
Actually, the idea was yours.
Right.
When I bought that land, I thought I was building the house of my dreams. Mm-hmm. When I retire, I figured I could have that retirement home near the beach and relax. And then you came up with the idea of doing the Airbnb. That never crossed my mind, but I think it was a great idea. Thanks to you, Stephan, you have made this grow and brought us additional income. And with that, I'm not going to say that it hasn't been challenges and headaches, but every business comes with that.
That's right.
And you're very good at handling, challenges. So I feel comfortable having you behind this project, doing, what you're doing. But we have learned a lot, I think, and I'm not saying that this will be the first or the last. Hopefully this is the first of many, right, or a few. And now that we have experience of what to do or what not to do, I think it's going to be easier.
That's right. So tell us about how you initially acquired So to give you a little bit of a background, so our Airbnb is actually in Rosarito in Mexico, about 30 minutes past the border. And you initially bought it as just a plot of land, right, where the house is at now?
Yes, and I had not planned on buying that lot, but my sister bought one just like half a block away from it one night when we were talking about it, and I said, well, where is it? And so she told me the location, and I went and asked, and there was one available, which was nice because it was a corner lot. That whole project was pretty much sold out, and somebody, I guess, had backed out or something. So I was lucky. I was at the right place at the right time. So we bought it and left it there for I want to say 3-4 years. Did nothing about it. There, yeah.
And like you said, the original plan was for you to maybe build a retirement home there.
Yeah, but I know I was far from retiring still, so I just left it alone until you came up with the idea. And from seeing that piece of land with just dirt and seeing what we made out of it, it's amazing. I'm really proud of our project. You had some great ideas with the designs, and you worked with the architect and made some changes, and you wouldn't think that in that little piece of land we would make such a big house.
Right.
So
let's go into that, talking a little bit about the architect, because I think maybe some people watching this may just turn a home that they already have into an Airbnb, maybe if it's a rental or they're buying another property for that reason. But let's say if you're starting from the ground up, like kind of how we did it, we interviewed a couple different architects, right?
Actually 3.
Yeah, so actually 3. We saw some of the projects that they were working on, and the one that we eventually ended up going with was a recommendation from another family member. What did you think of that experience? What's the best way to go, I guess, about finding an architect that you like?
I think the safest way is when he has been recommended, especially by a family member, and not just pick somebody that just you see working on another project there that you don't know. And I think out of all the ones that we interviewed, we went with our gut feeling, and I think we did the right thing going with him.
Right.
They all have their flaws, but who doesn't? And out of the 3 that we interviewed, I think he was the best.
Yeah. So, and speaking of that, it's crazy because I think another one that we were considering using. After the fact, we've seen some of their projects, and the owners are not happy with their builds, and they've had a lot of problems. And actually, one of the very first people that we met with, the house that he was building when we met with him, to this day, and this is before we even started our project, is still not done. Like, they're still working on it to this day because of problems they've had.
Yes.
And that house was half built when we met with them, before we even started this project. So it is really important, I think, to really do your research, make sure they have good recommendations, maybe talk to some of the owners of other projects, and make sure that there's no issues like that, because not only them, but just other people that we know had problems with their properties. And that's to say also, this is in Mexico, which is a little bit different than here. I think in the U.S. it's a little bit easier to find reputable people because you can look, they're licensed. I mean, not that they're not over there, but you can do a lot more background, I think, on people here than in Mexico. So that's always added a little bit more of a challenge, right? Like in some things have been easier.
Right.
Some things it's been harder because it's Mexico. So
when it comes to contractors, I think there's a lot of similarities everywhere, and I've noticed in Mexico, Ecuador, here, and I see this kind of the same problems, delays. They start a project, and they start another project, and then they come and work a few days here and a few days there, and it's dragging. The finish line is, they really never deliver when they say they were going to deliver. And so that was really part of the stress that we went through, because he gave us a date that he was going to deliver. That did not happen. And that was after we had to deal with a city, and getting city permits.
Let's talk about that. How was the process with the permits? Again, this is all in Mexico, so it is probably different than here in the U.S.
And especially because we've never done it before, and then it was a foreign country. It was another challenge. You get something done, and then you submit it, and then you have to wait like 3 months for them to review it, and then they give you back the package and said, no, you need to do this and you need to do that. Then you do that, and they just resubmit it again. Long story short, it lasted like a year before we could finally break ground.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we had a little bit of back and forth with the association there, because they wanted certain things. They wanted us to use their contractors, so that was kind of a challenge as well. Again, a lot of these things, they may arise here. Maybe it was because we were in Mexico, but definitely the year leading up to where we broke ground was a lot of back and forth, I feel like. Just for little things that I'm sure it happens here though too. I don't think it's just, it might even be stricter here than in Mexico. So that's just the experience we had. But again, I think that may happen anywhere.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think in that part we can just say is just like, maybe give yourself extra time. Don't be in a rush, because these permits and finding contractors and going back and forth with that, it does take time. It took longer than we expected. We didn't expect it to take a year before we could break ground.
So don't get too excited, guys. It's better to be patient, like Stephan says, and get things right, get them done right. And once they are done and you see it all built and furnished and decorated, you feel like it's almost like a pregnancy. Baby's born, and then you enjoy the baby, and then you forget all the pain and the heartaches and everything. But right now, I think it's paying off. All those headaches, all those hiccups that we had, it's paying off.
And the build, how long did the build take? Do you remember? I want to say that took another year as well, too, right?
Yes. But the contractor started working on some stuff prior to breaking ground in the warehouse, and he just brought, the big tractor, and installed it. So that helped a little bit. But yeah, it took about a year.
Yeah. And that was always a little bit frustrating for us because we had a certain date that it was expected to be turned in, and that turned into maybe an extra 3 months, and then another month, and then another month.
And the rain, they
the rain doesn't help as well, yeah. So, it's another thing. It's just, I think with these type of big projects like this, you got to have some patience, especially if you're building from the ground up. If you have a house that's already built and all you got to do is furnish it and design it and put it on the market, then, that's probably a lot less headache than this. But this was kind of cool because we got to kind of like envision what we wanted and then see it become what we thought, as opposed to working with something that you already have.
Right. And if we were to do another one, then we know exactly what steps to take. We know how long it's going to be, so we're not going to get upset, over not getting it done or seeing completed at a certain, when it's promised that it's going to be completed.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the design of the property, because I think our property is pretty unique on the way it was built, aside from the interior design, which we'll get into that next. But the way we designed our property is specifically made for Airbnb. We built this property telling ourselves, like, this is not a home for us. This is not something that we're probably even going to spend a lot of time here. So we got to design this in a way where it's going to be most beneficial for renting it on Airbnb specifically. And what I mean by that is we designed this property to kind of be like a transformer property, it's one building, but we can rent it in 3 different ways.
Correct.
So the way we did that was we pretty much made it like a duplex. One side of the property, or one listing, I guess you could say, is a 4 bedrooms
and
maybe 5 bathrooms, something like that.
Actually, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, 4 bathrooms. And the other side is a 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms.
And then we have the 8th bathroom on the rooftop.
Yeah, and then it has a shared rooftop, which both properties share the rooftop. So on top, there's a barbecue area, a small pool. We're building a nice bar up there. And that's shared between the 2 properties. So the third way that we can rent this property out, though, is we specifically made a point that we wanted to have a way to open up the middle walls. And there wasn't enough room, I think, to make it how I really wanted to, like, really open a big wall up. But what we did was put doors in between the properties that can be opened so that you can rent it as one big property. So now, instead of renting a 3 bedroom or a 4 bedroom, you're renting a 7 bedroom property. So if you have a big group, you can rent it that way. And then you pretty much would rent the whole entire duplex. So that's been pretty cool because we've seen people take advantage of all 3 of them.
Right.
So now we can appeal to the small groups or a huge group. So again, that was all part of the design, specifically for Airbnb, which I don't think you're going to have a regular house built that way if if you lived in it before or something like that. So if you're building something from scratch, I guess that's a little insider tip or a little hack that you could do, because it's really going to give you a lot of flexibility on what you can rent. You can rent to those people that have 6 people in their group or people that have 20 people in their group. You can do it with that when you have that type of flexibility in the property. So as far as the interior design, I'll come to you on that.
And as far as I'm going to go back a little bit. As far as the design, it's kind of unique. You don't see many places where the bedrooms are downstairs, the kitchen and living room and dining room is on the 2nd floor. And the reason we did that is so give more visibility to people, because most people, they don't go and stay in the bedroom. They go in, the living room or the kitchen. And because it's higher, people are going to be able to see the ocean or, all the common areas there. So that's kind of unique.
Some sort of view. It's not just like the street.
Right. So that's unique. And then we have, of course, balconies on both sides. And then you go to the 3rd floor, and that's the rooftop. I think really that's been the selling point of that property is the rooftop, that we've really made it like the area that you want to be hanging out at. Yeah, because it has a big sitting area, so even if two families are renting, they can share. There's a big sitting area. We have a big table there that they can have dinner. You know, they want a barbecue, they want to go in the jacuzzi or the pool. It's there, and then they have it has a beautiful area of the beach.
Yeah, a view of the beach.
A view, yes.
And so one point that I kind of fought my dad on about for a little bit, but I was like, we need this somehow, is like we need a pool on the rooftop. And the reason I did that is because I did some research, and it's one of the main things that people search for on Airbnb is that the property has either a pool or a jacuzzi.
Right.
So that's another tip. If you have a property, even if you can add a jacuzzi in there, I think you're going to get a lot more rentals. Like ours specifically, if you look at our listing, Airbnb will actually tell you this is one of the very few properties in this area that has a pool.
I was honestly concerned too to put a pool on the third floor. I'm thinking, oh my God, what if it leaks down? It's going to ruin the whole all the way from the third floor to the bottom floor. But I guess the builder knew what he was doing. Thank God we never had any problems
so far. But also, it's not like it's a huge pool. I mean, it's like a small pool / big jacuzzi sort of thing. But either way, I mean, it's a huge selling point, I think. So it's something definitely to consider if you're planning on doing an Airbnb, to have something like that.
Especially because it's up high, and again, you have a view of the area. So people do enjoy that.
So let's talk about interior design, because I'm going to leave this side, even though we both worked on it, I'm going to leave it up to you, because I know that's something you like to do. So how did we go about actually designing the interior of the home?
Well, I like a certain look. You like something different, and we couldn't agree to do the whole thing the same ways. Which is, I thought at the end it worked out better, because you know, like younger generation likes one thing, and you know, older generation likes something else. I like very contemporary. I like very light colors, white and with a touch of some other color. But you made it really cool too. Like everybody, you know, people like your age, I think they really enjoy your side. So decorating that was the best part, guys. Going shopping and working on how we're gonna spread things out, and how we're gonna make each room look different and appeal to people staying there. I think that was the most exciting part of it.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of the way we designed it too is like, I don't know about you, because I feel like that is your style. Like if it was even your own home, you'd probably design it the same way. But like even for me, like some touches, yes, but like I don't even think I would have designed my own house the same way. I probably it's a little bit too wild, you know. And I'll admit it is a little wild. But in my head, I'm like, this has to stand out, right? You got to like, and I think that's one of the biggest things on Airbnb is you have to find a way to stand out from the other properties around you.
Right.
So a lot of these properties in Rosarito around us, they all have very, very similar designs inside.
And I think people are looking for something different to stay for a weekend or a week.
Right.
Like you said, they probably won't decorate their home like that, but they want to go on a weekend and see something different, something crazy, like you call it.
Exactly.
So I think that's
like, think about if you go to like Vegas, right? Like, I mean, a lot of the rooms might look kind of crazy, or they just have like a very strong like type of design. But you like, even though it's cool and you want to stay there for the weekend, you're not going to probably live in something like that, you know? So that's kind of what we did, but we really want to like, you know, all our rooms have semi-wild like wallpaper. They have a little theme or something. But I think it really pops on the pictures when you look at the listing. And it makes people say like, oh, I want to stay there, as opposed to like our competition. They all look kind of the same. So that's one thing that I think you really got to pay attention to. I think that's huge, is to
make it stand out.
Make it stand out. And pay attention to your competition, because you got to think as like, you're not going to be the only listing that they look at. They're going to look at maybe 4 or 5 before making a decision. And you want to look different from those other 4 or 5 that they're looking at. So think about that when you're doing your design. As far as the furniture, you know, we kind of just kind of like had a storage unit and we're just buying stuff as we went, right? I mean, 'cause
Yeah, we
had
were taking things at a time. We almost had to go every weekend there. So every time we went, we would bring stuff. So we rented a storage area and we kept just storing stuff there. Some of the big items, like refrigerators, washer, dryers, we bought over there at Costco, just because crossing the border with it, you still have to pay import tax, and big items to transport them was a little more hassle. So we bought that, but all the other stuff we bought it here, and we took it little by little while they were building the place. So by the time they were finished, we were ready to just go in and decorate.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're building a place from the ground up like us, I mean, I think a good tip is to buy stuff little by little, because it could get expensive too, right? If you're buying all this at once, it could be a really big expense. But for us, how we pretty much had like a year and a half to buy everything. So it was a little bit easier on us buying it little by little like that.
So keep your eye on sales.
Yeah, exactly. It gives you time to really find good deals, wait for sales, things like that. And the last thing I guess I could say about the furniture is, whatever you buy, you want to make sure you're buying something that's sturdy, you know, and that's kind of like party proof or whatever, because you got to think is like, it's going to be high volume, right? Especially if your place is rented a lot, it's going to be constantly people that are not going to care about it as much as you would, right? So it's got to be something sturdy, something that's not going to break so easy. We've already had a couple things break, some dining chairs that we realized after were not really the best quality.
Shower doors.
Yeah. So different things that have broken already. So it's kind of like, a good tip is maybe it's cheaper really to spend a little bit more in the beginning and buy it once than cheaping out too much, because you're going to be constantly replacing stuff, which that's going to be a regular expense. We already see that, right? It's like stuff is going to break, stuff is going to need repairs.
It's a business at the end of the day, and every business has its, problems.
Expenses,
expenses.
So,
but one thing I learned from one of your friends is, don't fall in love with it, because it's not your home.
Yeah.
And when I was buying stuff, I bought it thinking, oh, this is like for my house. And when I see something that is not taken care of, it kind of hurts, because I bought it with so much love, thinking that, oh, I want to make this look beautiful. And like you say, people don't take care of it sometimes.
Right.
So yeah, durable. Yes, it's some huge advice.
Okay, so let's start talking now about how it's been with Airbnb, specifically getting signed up, getting your property on. I guess I could talk a little bit more about that because I've been dealing with that a little bit more. But to be honest, it was pretty fairly easy. There's a couple things that you'll need to do before you can really go live. And actually, even that part wasn't too hard about getting live. The part that took a little bit longer was getting paid, and that was for reasons I'll get into in a second. But really, getting on Airbnb is as simple as just creating an account, loading up your pictures, descriptions, and really following their guidelines on how you should set up the pages, because they want you to put your pictures a certain way, go through all like the amenities. Like, there's a lot of things that they have on there that it's important that you mark them off, because at the beginning, like, there was some stuff that I guess I just didn't take the time to do in the beginning, and then people ask about it. Like, they really do like kind of pay attention to that as far as like, I think just an example, someone was like, I guess I didn't check off that essentials are included, because I didn't really know what that even meant, But I guess what it means is like that there's no like toilet paper, or there's no stuff like that, shampoo and stuff like that, And I told her, no, we do have all that stuff. It's all included. But because I didn't mark it off, people ask about it. So little things like that.
It makes a difference when people are choosing a place to stay. Yeah,
I mean, it could take you anywhere from a few hours to half a day of really like going through all the little features for your listing. But take the time to do it, because it does matter.
It does make a difference. Yeah, because people get there at midnight and there's no place to buy water, like, within a block or two. Sometimes they have to take their medicine and there's no water. So we make sure we have all that, or they get there late and they don't have the time to buy shampoo or, soap or whatever. So that's why we provide all that. So when people come in, they're ready to enjoy the place and not worry about, oh my gosh, I forgot to bring this and I forgot to bring that.
Yeah, like we don't have
that's
water.
important. I can see why people look at that when they're looking for Airbnbs.
Right.
Because it is important that when they walk in, they're ready to just get some rest and enjoy.
Right. But besides that, I mean, to be honest, you can, if you have pictures done, which that's another tip too, is make sure you really get good pictures, because it does make a huge difference. I mean,
hire Stephan, guys, for pictures and videos.
Me having a media company, I've always preached that, hey, the pictures make a big difference, right? But in this case, I've seen that it really does. I mean, we've had the good pictures from the beginning, but I've had friends and other family that have Airbnbs, and they asked me to do pictures on them, and they said after the professional pictures got uploaded, they've seen a big difference in their bookings. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, maybe more in Mexico, because I don't think they have access to as many maybe real estate media companies like us here, or maybe it's not as cheap over there as it is here. But you look at the listings, and I would say 90% of them are cell phone pictures.
Really?
Yeah. So then when you see our pictures that are bright and vibrant and nice skies and clear, they're like, wow. I've even had a couple people tell us can you send me the real pictures, not the 3D mock-ups? And I'm like, they're not 3D mock-ups, they're edited
you
photos.
Refer me to your photographer that took those pictures.
So I've helped a couple other people out there, and they've seen an increase in booking. So definitely don't cheap out on the pictures, spend some money and get some professional pictures done. But moving on to getting paid by Airbnb, because this took us a little bit of time, right? I think it took us maybe about a month or two. And I think specifically for us, because of the situation us being in Mexico, but the taxes is really kind of what Airbnb has to make sure they have set up correctly for you before they're going to send you a payout. So for us, it was weird, because at first I had the account, I mean, it's still under my name, but I had it going to my social security number, which is an American social security number. And if you're in Mexico, they're going to withhold a lot of taxes if you don't have a Mexican tax ID. So
that was another challenge.
That was another challenge that took a month almost, right?
Yes.
I think to really kind of get fixed. Because they wanted to really withhold something ridiculous,
35 or 36%?
35 to 38%, in that range right there, where they were withholding that much just for fees and taxes that they wanted to pay to Mexico, because we were not a Mexican citizen, which fortunately my mom is. So we spent the next month or so getting all her paperwork, because you hadn't dealt with anything over there in a long time, right? So you had to go to the
get some
basically
special,
the Mexican IRS and get your paperwork in order over there.
In order to do that, I had to have a Mexican ID, which that's another process, another month before they send it to you from Mexico City. And so once I got that, then I had to go to the IRS, Hacienda, and get my tax ID number. Then the CPA had to do her part, and it was a process, but.
Yeah. But luckily we got that fixed. I mean, our tax rate over there now has gone from 38% to, I think,
16%.
Yeah, 16. It's cut it in half, if not more.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you're doing a high volume of business, that makes a huge difference.
Right. One of the things I would suggest on taxes. Speaking of taxes, is the Mexican IRS is very strict on deductions, invoices, for example. Over here, you just go to Home Depot, you save your receipt, you take it to your CPA, and that counts as an expense. Over there, if you go to Home Depot, you have to sign up with them, because they have to have a tax ID number. So any sales they do, they have to pay taxes, of course, and that's how they control it, by me signing up with them, getting that number. So you have to have what they call factura. It's an invoice, and that's the only thing that you can deduct.
Yeah.
If you go to, I don't know, Staples and get something and you don't sign up for that, you cannot deduct it.
Right. It's a lot more strict in Mexico doing deductions than it is here. So I guess that only applies if you're going to do an Airbnb in Mexico, which I think this is going to apply to a lot of people, because even friends of mine, like I have friends that are buying properties in Cancun, in Playa del Carmen, in Tulum, things like that. So all these things that we're talking about are going to apply over there as well. So that's something that maybe just take in consideration.
And as a U.S. citizen or permanent resident of the U.S., you're supposed to declare, and I'm not going to go too much into it because I'm not a CPA, but that just speaking from experience, you're supposed to report worldwide income. So whatever taxes you pay in Mexico, you can get credit for here. Let's say you pay $20,000 worth of income taxes over there. You bring proof of that, and then that gets credited over here. Because if Airbnb is going to give you a 1099 and report your income, then you do want to have those deductions.
Right, so you're not getting double taxed on
Right.
that. So let's move on to how it's been with the guests so far. There's a lot of different ways you can go about, and this is when you're setting up your listing, you can make all these decisions, right? You can make how you approve people to stay at your property. You can approve who can stay at your property, their cancellation policies, things like that, right? Because you can really tweak it to the way you want. We're lenient on some things, and we're a little more strict on other things. So for me, for example, I'm a little bit stricter, I think, than most properties in the area as far as cancellations. So we require, I think, a 50% down when they book, which doesn't go to us, it goes to Airbnb. But they have to put 50% down, and then I believe a week before they pay the balance, and they cannot cancel within 5 days of the booking. Of course, you can be even more strict. I think on Airbnb, they consider that like a moderate cancellation policy. You can be more strict and just say no cancellations, period. You know, you got to pay it all up front and you can't cancel.
But you choose that, I mean, you design that cancellation policy?
Yeah, you choose the policy that you want. Some people are a lot more lenient, right? Some people will let you cancel up to a day before.
Yeah. But that stays on the Airbnb information, right? When people are looking for...
I don't know. Oh, it'll say what the... Yeah,
right.
yeah. No, for sure. They know what it is when they book. And so far, I don't feel like it's really been that big of a problem. And I think we've had, in the 8 months we've been doing this, we've probably had over 100 bookings already. And I want to say we've had maybe 3-4 cancellations.
It's not bad at all.
So it's really not that bad. And for us, it's like our property has been doing really well, and we're booked out right now at least 3-4 months out, like always. I mean, right now we're booking for September, you know, and we're the time of making this is May. So.
Even in the winter, right? Because Rosarito's kind of cold
Yeah.
the winter, and they were rented all the time.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into more of that, like kind of like how it's been doing at the end. But getting back to the guests, I mean, so you can choose, the cancellation policy, you can choose how they book, right? Because sometimes some people choose to kind of like, everything has to be a request. So if you want to book, they have to request to book, then you have to review it, then you can approve or not. So for me, even though I would like to do that, the reason I chose not to do that is because in my head, I want to be able to come up in the search as much as possible, right? So I think that's part of the strategy with your properties is how can I show up in the search as much as possible? So for us, you'll show up in the search if someone searches for 6 people, if they search for 10 people, if they search for 12 people, if they search for 18 people. We're going to show up in all those searches. If they search for properties with a pool, we're going to show up in that search. If we request, and this goes to what I just talked about, the
gated community.
That as well.
And people do care a lot
especially
about that.
like in Mexico,
Yes.
right? But for us, and this is why I chose not to do pre-approval or to do the approval process, is because we show up under instant booking, meaning if you see it, you can book it in that moment. And some people, they don't want to have to go back and forth. They just want to know, okay, I want to just have this done.
They know what they want.
Myself, if I'm booking for somewhere, I don't want to do instant booking. I don't want to have to like request it and then check back the next day to see if the owner got back to me. I just want to book it and be done with it, you know?
Right.
So that's the reason I did that, because I don't want to get filtered out if someone clicks instant booking.
Right.
So that's
So these are great pointers, Stephan, for people that are thinking of doing that or doing it now, and they have a different policy that they haven't maybe adjusted. I think that's a very good pointer.
Now, the downside of that, right, is sometimes because they're instant booking, you're going to get some bad apples, right?
Yep.
And that's happened to us too. But again, it hasn't happened so much where I think it's become a problem where I'm thinking about changing the policy. Again, out of 100 bookings, we've maybe had 5, 6 like bad incidents or bad guests, I guess you could say. And I feel like all besides maybe 1 or 2 were really like bad guests. You know, like some are just like, okay, like something broke, or like, you know, like they didn't check out on time, or they were too loud, or threw a party and things like that. Like nothing too crazy. I mean, not like a wild party, but they were just being a little loud. Those are like what I'm talking about. We've only had one, I think, really like serious incident where like someone went on a drunken rampage and started breaking stuff in the house. Yes. Which I'm not going to get too much into that, but really, we really haven't had too many bad guests, I could say. I would say 95% of them have been good.
I think because of the place is so inviting, people just want to go and have, you know, party and have a good time, and then sometimes they have a little bit too much to drink.
And I think that's also depends on like where you're at, right? Yeah. I mean, so for us, like we're in Rosarito, which is a party town. Yeah. You know, people go to Rosarito, not everybody, but they're gonna go. But most like younger people or even some older, that just go in there and they want to go drink and eat and have a good time, right? So obviously, when you have that, you're going to have those type of incidents happen, right? So it just depends where you're at. I mean, if you're in a peaceful cabin somewhere, you're probably not going to deal with that as much, you know. But if you're in an area where people, maybe like Vegas or who knows, things like that, you're probably going to run into those sort of things.
But that's why people go to those places, because they want to go and have fun.
Right.
So about the cleaning, like I was saying, it's very important that you have a very reliable cleaning crew and make sure that the property is ready for new guests to move in at 3 o'clock. 2:30, the house has to be completely cleaned and everything has to be put away and ready, like I said, for the newcomers to move in. So that's important. And making sure that it has all the essentials that you were talking about, and pretty much having it clean before they come in, it's the best scenario.
Yeah, and also one thing I would recommend is having a backup crew too, because you just never know, like, especially if you have a high volume unit, right? It's like people get sick or some emergencies happen. If you have like your cleaning crew doesn't show up one day, and it's 11 o'clock and you have people checking in at 3 and they can't go, you're going to have a problem. So it's always good to have a backup too. I mean, this is a perfect example. Just happened the other day, right? We normally don't clean the houses sometimes like right when people check out, because if we have maybe a 3-4 day gap, the house tends to get a little bit dirty just by dust and stuff like that. You know, if it sits. So normally we try to have them clean like the day of or the day before. So for example, we had someone check out, I think, I want to say Sunday, and the next booking wasn't until yesterday, which was Thursday. But then I got a last minute, hey, we want to book today. Like, can we go check in ASAP? But the house wasn't clean. So I said, let me talk to our cleaners. Let me see when's as soon as I could have it clean. Well, the lady that normally cleans the house, she was busy cleaning another house that she already had for that day. So luckily we have a backup person, and then she went that day and was able to get it done. But that's why it's important to have a backup, because in that case, if our lady couldn't come, we would have lost out on that booking right there.
But that's also something for us to learn. Maybe we should get it clean. I mean, if it's a little dusty, it's not as bad as not having it clean in the event that you get a last minute booking.
Right. And I think just to kind of wrap this up, I mean, is there any other expenses that you could think of that we incurred that we maybe weren't expecting when we first started this whole thing?
Not really, other than, well, the norm, cable. That's up to you if you want to provide internet, Wi-Fi.
Which I feel like these days you have to.
Yeah.
I think for us, a big thing that we didn't really expect was our electricity bill to be so high.
Yes. In Mexico, electricity is very, very expensive, and I think mostly because it's on the beach.
Yeah.
The closer you are to the water, the more expensive it is. So that's something that it's we were not expecting that expense that high.
Especially on this house too. I mean, there's 7 bedrooms, so there's seven air conditioning units. There's
The
a
pool.
pool that needs to be heated, so that's a lot of electricity.
Lot of
and then just as a
lighting.
big property in general, so there's
Yeah.
a lot of lights and stuff like that. So our electricity bill is probably one of the biggest expenses I think we have
It
every
is.
month. Yeah.
It is the biggest expense.
Yeah. So something to kind of consider. But besides that, there really hasn't been too many things. You just got once in a while you're gonna have stuff that breaks, and for the most part, Airbnb will cover that, or the guests will cover it. If the guests don't want to cover it, then Airbnb usually covers it.
And you want to talk about how long you have between the time that people check out and you realize they broke or took something to notify Airbnb?
Yeah,
There's
I think you're supposed to let them know within 3 business days. Yeah, you got to report it.
Otherwise, you
And-
just absorb the expense.
Right. And then you have to have some kind of proof of whatever it costs. But then normally they're pretty good. We've only had that situation twice so far, and Airbnb took care of it both times. So
Right. Or you give the host, the guest, the choice to pay right there and
Themselves,
then.
yeah.
And then they don't have a bad review or
Right.
a bad report with Airbnb.
exactly. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up. I think all the points that we wanted to talk about today about the Airbnb. We're gonna put a link right here somewhere for our Airbnb, so you could check it out and kind of see what we were talking about. Hopefully you like it, and if you ever want to stay, then definitely let us know as well, because you can. And I hope this was very informative for everybody that's thinking about getting into the Airbnb business. It definitely has its ups and downs, but I think so far it's been a really good investment for us, and it's just getting better. And hopefully, in the near future, we start working on a new one.
Right.
So
Yeah, they definitely will love to do another one at least.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we know the hiccups and we know the hurdles that we can avoid,
Yeah.
it's gonna be easier.
Right.
So if any of you guys are willing to or thinking of doing that, and we can help you out, answer any questions, and make
sure.
it easier, give us a call.
Yeah, definitely. We're here to help you guys with any questions that you have about Airbnb, and of course escrow or real estate questions. We're here as well. I know this specific
Videos,
episode didn't have it.
photos, one-stop shop.
Yeah. So thanks again for tuning in. Hope this was an informative episode, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Okay, bye.